Welcome to My Compassionate Heart podcast, a platform where caregivers and their loved ones can learn, share experiences, and connect with local resources. Our goal is to simply enrich lives and serve our community one heart at a time. My name is Jamacy Sutherland, and I'm your host. Welcome to My Compassionate Heart.
So I want to welcome our guests to our first podcast. This is Compassionate Heart. And we just wanted to take a moment to welcome you. You're here for the first time with us. We love that you joined us, you tuned in, however you're listening. We welcome you. So, for those who are joining here for the first time that are caregivers, a special welcome to you because this platform was designed with you in mind. And we recognize that you play a pivotal role in caring for your loved one, and you're at the center of navigating the healthcare journey with them. So, as we recognize Alzheimer's Month throughout Canada, January is Alzheimer's Awareness Month in Canada. And as a Compassionate Heart team, we want to dedicate our first podcast conversation to those living with Alzheimer's and dementia and to their loved ones who are dedicating their time and their energies caring for our clients and for their loved ones. Our topic for today is really finding the silver lining, creating meaningful engagement with our loved ones who have Alzheimer's. And our guest speaker today is Erianne Stewart. And welcome, Erianne, to our first podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, we're very appreciative of you being here and really love that you've taken the time to chat with us. It's really a conversation today, and I really want our listeners and those who are tuning in to this very first podcast to really feel comfortable. Please get a cup of coffee, tea, whatever you need to be comfortable, sit down, and so that we can have our conversation. And hopefully, this will be meaningful to you and to your loved one as we discuss that. So one of the things I actually came across, Erianne, was some statistics that was published on the Alzheimer's Society of Canada, and it mentioned here, and I'll quote it exactly. By the year 2030, researchers are projecting that nearly 1 million people in Canada will be living with dementia. And they're forecasting that there's a possibility that more than 1.7 million people will have some form of dementia by 2050. When I saw this statistic, it was just staggering. And the reason it is mind blowing because I'm thinking to myself of the families that I have encountered so far as a nurse with loved ones with Alzheimer's and or some form of dementia. You know, I think of all that they're going through with a new diagnosis and trying to navigate all of that. It's a lot, and to know that we're going to see more of this in the coming years, it is, it's something that really touches me, and I'm glad that we're having a conversation today and bringing some awareness to Alzheimer's disease, and hopefully that will be a resource for someone who is tuned in today. So perhaps we can start the conversation here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what is Alzheimer's and also what is dementia? Can you give us a little bit of insight as into what is it?
Yes. So that's a really good question, and it's a very common question. Dementia is actually an umbrella term. It's a very general and broad term. And dementia and Alzheimer's are actually they're not the same thing. So dementia, if you view it as the umbrella, Alzheimer's would be a type of dementia. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of like to think of it as cancer is an umbrella term, right? Mm-hmm. And when you ask someone, what do you have? And they say cancer, and they say the next question generally is, what type of cancer do you have? Mm-hmm. The same thing is true with dementia. If you ask someone what they have and they say dementia, usually your next question should be, what type of dementia? Because there's so many different types of dementias, and to kind of differentiate between dementia and Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia. It comprises about 60 to 80% of all dementias. And so that's kind of the differentiator there. I don't know if that made sense, but again, dementia is just a broad term. It's a general term. that is just a group of symptoms that include memory loss, trouble thinking, trouble speaking, and it can be for a lot of different reasons why someone might be experiencing those things.
Excellent. And thanks for breaking that down and making it very simple. So, what I'm hearing is that you're saying that basically Alzheimer's disease falls under that umbrella term of dementia. It's a form of dementia.
Exactly.
And so, it's important to know that that dementia can include many forms. There can be many forms of dementia, but Alzheimer's is just one form of it.
Exactly.
And so I think that's a really good way you broke it down and helping us to understand that it is dementia is the umbrella term, but Alzheimer's fits within that category of dementia.
Yes.
So thank you so much for giving some clarity to that.
Yeah.
Could you shed some light on maybe what are some of, I oftentimes encounter a lot of, patients and clients in the community. And sometimes a lot of their questions to us and to members of our care team is like, so what are some symptoms? Like, how do I know my loved one has Alzheimer's? Or how do I know my loved one has some form of dementia? Because, they're not quite sure. It could be something else. They're oftentimes wanting to know, what am I looking for?
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, I want to let you guys know that Alzheimer's is not a normal part of aging. Dementia is not a normal part of aging. And so, there's things that happen when we age, like we forgot where we put our keys, or, occasionally we might forget someone's name. But when it's interrupting your daily living, that's when you want to start paying more attention to what's going on. Is this happening more and more often? Some of those symptoms might include like forgetting doctor's appointments, forgetting birthdays, even like kind of unusual behavior, like maybe you find your loved one's remote in the refrigerator. Or, I don't know if you've seen this with your clients or your patients, but just unusual behavior, maybe keys in the bathroom drawer, car keys in the bathroom drawer, or just odd things. Other things could be, forgetting financial things or forgetting to pay bills over and over again, trouble dealing with your finances in general. So just when things start interrupting your daily living, that's when you kind of want to start paying more attention to, okay, is this becoming a pattern? And then you can take the steps to go and talk to your primary care provider. Or even in the beginning, if you start noticing things, don't even wait. Just go in and you can talk to your primary care provider, and they can start talking to you about different assessments and things like that they can follow up with.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that's a great place to start. And just observing. They know their loved ones. They live with them. They know their habits and things that they do within the home. And if they're seeing some changes there with what you've mentioned, like putting the keys in the wrong places, and this is happening on multiple occasions, because sometimes I put my keys in the wrong place, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's a form of dementia there. But it's repetitive actions that don't quite seem to make sense in terms of where they're placed or how it's done. So that might definitely be a sign that something else is happening here. And, it warrants, investigation. It warrants you talking to your family doctor or nurse practitioner you might be seeing, someone who can help to assess your loved one and really understand those changes and what's happening with them. So that's been a really great start to our conversation. What I wanted to talk a little bit about more, and this is something that I see with a lot of our clients or family members in the community. They would ask me, I have a loved one with Alzheimer's disease. I'm not quite sure what kinds of activities will work well for them or what kinds of activities they can participate in. Oftentimes, this is with clients who are kind of middle to end stage, so to speak, or advanced stage, and they're just, worried that their loved one is not able to participate the way they would like. And they're oftentimes left wondering, well, what else can I do? I just don't want to not engage them. But what else can I do to keep my loved one who has dementia involved in various activities? So I'm wondering if we can perhaps touch on that. First of all, why is it important to engage our loved ones with dementia in various activities?
Yeah, so this is something I'm super passionate about. As she talked to you about in my bio, I'm a recreational therapist. And I did a lot of my work after graduation in a memory care unit and also in the homes of individuals with dementia. And I focused all on activities, all on helping them to enjoy life and to find meaning through activities. And this can be really difficult because, they're not the same as they were before their diagnosis. They may not enjoy things like they did before, but we'll never know unless we try it out. And so, my suggestion to family members, the very first thing is think back to what hobbies, what interests, what was their career like before their diagnosis, and how can we incorporate those things into their life now? And that might look different. You might need to adapt it differently or change it throughout the stages. Like you mentioned, in the later stages, it's going to look a lot different than in the earlier stages. But try to find things that they enjoyed doing before their diagnosis and see if they can do those things now. So, for example, maybe someone loved reading and they read all the time before their diagnosis, but kind of in the last few years, they've stopped reading, they've stopped, enjoying those types of things. Well, maybe you could start a little book club, you and them, or you and a few little family members. And even if they can't read, they can sit and listen. And you can tell them about the stories, and you can even go back and reminisce about the books that they enjoyed in their past. And so, again, I just always recommend going back to the things that they once enjoyed and trying to find ways to incorporate it now that they can find meaning and joy in those things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my first suggestion. Just try to find things that they love.
Yeah, and I think that's a really awesome suggestion. I remember we had a client when I was much younger in nursing. She most of her time she spent raising her kids and being at home helping with the management of the home, and she loved that. She loved being busy, being able to like fold clothing, do dishes, and all these things. And she was kind of in the advanced stages of dementia and admitted into a long-term care facility. And she would oftentimes get really, agitated in the evenings, wanting to move around and do different things. And they found that when they were able to engage her in things like in the room, that in her room itself, help her to fold clothing, she was so excited about that because that was one of the tasks that she really enjoyed.
Yes.
And as simple as that
Yes.
seemed, it meant a lot to her to just be able to do that
Yeah.
simple task. And it's not that it was needed for her to do that, but it was meaningful to her because that's something that she did in her younger days, raising her children. And that
Yeah.
and they saw a huge difference in terms of how her behaviors would be in the evening when she had something to do and to be entertained in that time. Also, I've come across cases where we had clients that enjoyed music. They really loved music when they were younger, and sometimes music is the very therapy that they need. Sometimes. So I'm not sure if you've come across that, but those are some examples that I've seen with myself and some of my colleagues that have taken care of clients
Yes.
with dementia.
I love both of those things. First of all, touching on the folding towels, I love doing things like that because it's familiar for these people. And even when they can't remember a lot of things, like they can remember the simple task of just folding, and it gives them a sense of like accomplishment, like, oh, I can do this still, that makes them feel so good about themselves. And then with the music too, I love that you brought that up because in my opinion, music is just pure magic in dementia care. Like no matter what stage you're in, no matter what your abilities are or interests, somehow music touches everyone. And I get chills. Like I have the chills right now thinking about it because it helps people just have joy, like overall just have joy, but it helps them be more fluid in their speaking sometimes. It helps them to, find more meaning out of life. And a lot of times you can reminisce as you're listening to music about past events and, past favorite times. So yes, to all of those things. I love that you brought that up.
Awesome. So I'm wondering if we can probably touch on, some folks might have questions around like, how do I know, or what types of activities can I engage my loved one in? Like, how can I know what types of activities they would want to participate in or want to engage in? Are there any tips around like how could they tell or know those things?
Yes. So again, this kind of goes back to what I was talking about before, is kind of drawing on their past
Mm-hmm.
hobbies and interests, trying to tap into those things, but also don't limit them. I would say just try to involve them in any activity, because they might find a new interest in something. And so that could be something as simple as, doing a puzzle. Maybe they've never done puzzles before, but maybe you can try a simple puzzle and then work your way up to more difficult ones if they can do them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it could be, pulling out a photo album and reminiscing. I love reminiscing in dementia care because it just, you can use it throughout the stages again, but it also helps just bring that joy that they might need. And so as you're looking for an activity that your loved one might be, lacking, or that you might want to involve them with, my recommendation is always just try it. And if they don't enjoy it, that's okay. You can try it again in a few weeks or a month. But again, a few of my favorites are music is very versatile, turning on music and dancing, photo albums, like I mentioned, trying to get that physical activity in. So that could be just as simple as going out for a walk. I think sometimes in our minds we think, oh, we've got to do this huge exercise routine and we've got to be lifting weights and all these things. But no, it can be as simple as just getting them moving out on a walk outside. And so, yeah, those are a few ideas that I have, but always just, if something comes to your mind, just try it out. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. One other tip I have too is if they're struggling to want to participate in an activity, a question I use often that works most of the time is, hey, can you come help me with something really quick?
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time they want to feel valued. They want to feel like they're helping and having a purpose. So most of the time they'll come, and then you can ask them, hey, can you help me draw this picture for my granddaughter? Or, hey, can you do this painting for a neighbor?
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of think of ways that you can creatively get them engaged in an activity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great question to ask. Can you come and help? Do you want to see what I'm doing? Maybe it's inviting them into that space where they can participate, right? You're giving them room and
Yeah.
permission to do so and feel comfortable to do so. And it's important to
Yeah.
them. I'm just thinking, I've also come across families who have said to me, Jamaicy, I cannot, no matter what I try, I cannot get them to participate in any activities whatsoever. They just don't want to participate, they don't want to get involved. And they're oftentimes expressing that they're frustrated with their loved one because, they just don't want to do much. What can you probably suggest or recommend in those instances?
Okay, so yeah, this is really common, and I'm glad you brought this up because I faced it a lot too. When I worked in a memory care unit, a lot of residents didn't want to come to the activities, so we had to try to create creative ways, or get them think of creative ways to get them to come.
Mm-hmm.
A few suggestions. First, try involving children. I know that sounds funny, but maybe a grandkid or a neighbor. For some reason, older adults love children. And so you could say, hey, I have, your granddaughter coming over today. Can you guys work on this little project together? Maybe you don't have kids around that could participate, and that's okay. Something else you could do is bring the activity to them. So maybe they're sitting in their recliner or they're on their bed. Say, hey, I really wanted to paint your nails today. Can I just do a little manicure for you? And you just sit them down and just do their nails right there. Or if it's a gentleman, you can give him a hand massage with some lotion. By gradually introducing activities to them in that way, like bringing the activity to them and kind of just letting them still sit there, they'll slowly become more open to other things. And if not, keep bringing the activities to them. You can offer sensory activities if they're bedridden. And same thing, like I mentioned before, music. So I think a lot of times we think in our mind that an activity is this big event and we have to like bring them to it. But in reality, you can bring it to them without saying, hey, this is an activity. You can just say, I wanted to do this for you today, or there's a neighbor that's sick, can we write them a letter?
Mm-hmm.
Or your daughter, we haven't seen your daughter in a while, why don't we write her a letter today?
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about how you phrase it,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of getting creative in how you introduce
Mm-hmm.
the activity to them.
I definitely agree with the creativity piece of it. It does. I think it's very important for caregivers not to be boxed into a certain way of doing things and being regimented, saying this is the activity, this is what you should do, and just being open. So today might be a
Yeah.
day that they might be open to painting, or tomorrow might not be
Yes.
that, and they might be opening to listening to music. So being flexible and allowing them to be able to choose differently each time is very
Yeah.
important in them feeling valued in participating in that activity.
And one thing too, if you're okay with me adding, if they are really not wanting to participate in anything, that's okay. Just let them be and turn on some soft music. Maybe turn the lights down a little bit, turn on some soft music, and just, provide an activity in a way that they don't feel like they're doing an activity. Music, just turn on some gentle music and let them just sit there, and maybe they need that day to just be, So that's another tip, is just, if they don't want to do it, don't force it.
Yeah, definitely.
Come back another day and try it again.
Yeah, and probably the next day it might be something they're up to and very excited about, right? So definitely having flexibility and willingness to adapt to what they're feeling and up to doing for that day is important. I'm thinking one other question that I had in mind. Um, can you think of ways or an example of how our clients or maybe their loved ones can adapt activities through the various stages of dementia? Because someone who's in the early stages of dementia might be able to do much more and participate much more in things that you're engaging them with, but someone who's in late stage dementia might not be able to do as much. So how do family members or caregivers adapt their activities to the different stages of Alzheimer's or dementia?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's something I get asked a lot. Again, it requires some creativity, but once you start thinking of things, the ball will just keep rolling. You'll think of more and more. So let's just use puzzles, for example. Let's say someone really enjoyed puzzles growing up and they've done it all throughout their life. Maybe in the beginning stages, you're still able to do, some 24 to 50 piece puzzles with them. And then as they progress, you maybe are able to do like a children's puzzle with them. And then even in the later stages, maybe you bring puzzles that they've completed in the past, or even bring puzzle pieces and just let them, fill them and fidget with them. And so just kind of slowly adapting those things throughout the stages. I love turning activities into a reminiscing activity by the later stages. So, maybe they enjoyed sports and they're still able to do sports in the earlier stages, like, golf or maybe bowling or something. But by the end of this end stages of dementia, maybe you can have it be more of a reminiscent activity where you're asking them questions or telling them stories about the days that they did that activity, or showing them pictures. And so there's a lot of different ways you can adapt activities. It's just all about how you can get creative with it. And again, in the beginning, maybe it is just trying to ask them questions about their past, and then just starting with that reminiscing piece. So
Awesome. Well, I think those are really great suggestions. And I think one of the things that comes to mind, there's no one size fit all idea. You really have to try different things and be open to trying different things with them. And a great starting point is finding out, or doing the things that they loved doing and finding ways to engage them in those things again. So if it's music that they love, then listening to music with them, or maybe getting an instrument where maybe you can play along with them or something of that nature. If it's
yes,
puzzles that they love,
yes,
maybe finding a puzzle. It might not be a 50-piece puzzle that you mentioned. It might be a kid's puzzle of a butterfly or something of that sort. that they can do
Yeah.
and still be able to participate in loving that activity. And so I think a lot of what I'm hearing today from our conversation is being flexible, being adaptive, and being creative in helping your loved one to engage in activities that you will be doing within the home, or maybe perhaps you're going to see them in a long-term care home or in a retirement residence, things that you can do with them when you visit with them. So, Erianne, I just want to thank you so much for spending some time with us today and just giving us some really insightful tips and as to how we can engage loved ones with dementia and specifically with Alzheimer's disease. And I really appreciate your time and really loved having you in this conversation today. And I know our guests and those watching will love to have you back again. So hopefully sometime soon we'll have you back again for another conversation. And I really, really appreciate your time today. So thank you so much for joining My Compassionate Heart.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Awesome.